So welcome to 5 Tips to Modernize Your RFP Process. I think we'll do quick introductions first. So Ashley, would you like to start?
Sure. My name is Ashley Myers, and I'm a product manager on the San Francisco Digital Services team. And I worked on the procurement of our vendor partners for constructing an affordable housing service, which you can find at housing.sfgov.org, which is one of the things I'll touch on today.
Thanks, Ashley. My name is Zach Burke. I'm the managing partner and founder at Exygy. We're a digital studio focused on developing more resilient and healthy communities. In the context of that work, a lot of our projects are in the civic sector, and we've done a lot of work procuring and working with agencies to help them through the procurement process, including on the housing portal project that Ashley mentioned. And so we've learned a lot about how we can bring what we do, which is digital craftsmanship, human-centered design, agile, iterative software development practices to the public sector. And we'd like to share some of those learnings with you today. So I think we'd like to provide a little bit of context about the types of projects that we're going to speak about today. Generally, these recommendations are about the procurement of the design and build of a digital product, a custom website, a service, a digital service, or software. And that word custom feels really important in this conversation. If you feel confident that what you need already exists out there, and you just want a copy or a version of the best option for that, that's more of what we would consider an off-the-shelf procurement versus a custom procurement. And our tips today are going to be focused more on the latter, on a custom procurement. If you have questions about off-the-shelf procurements, we'd be happy to answer those during the Q&A. So please feel free to stick around. But remember that these tips will be mostly about a custom procurement. If you're not sure whether you're doing a custom procurement or an off-the-shelf procurement, we have some recommendations about that as well. You could consider doing an RFI to get feedback from vendors to understand what is out there, what types of products exist, and will those potentially meet your needs, so that you can understand the landscape. An RFI is a great way to engage with the vendor community, and we can talk with you a bit during the Q&A or separately about some tips we have for running a great RFI. Here's some examples of terrific RFIs we've seen in the past that have helped to engage and help agencies to identify great vendors for an off-the-shelf procurement, as well as help them identify whether, in fact, a product exists off the shelf or if they need to invent something custom for scratch. Ashley, anything you want to add to the context?
Nope, I think you covered it.
Okay, great. Well, let's just jump right into the first tip. Ashley, why don't you take the lead?
Yeah. So Zach and I's first tip for you is to be modest. And what we mean by that is to define the project plan based only on what you really know. I think it can be tempting to use the process of writing an RFP to start making decisions or writing down all the things you're thinking. And that can certainly be valuable, but it's really important to provide that context and make sure that in the RFP you're very clear about the things where you've already done the research and you already have clear insights and areas where there's still more work needed. So the first thing is to be modest about is whether or not you actually really need a custom build, as Zach just referenced in sort of setting some context. It's possible that parts of what you need for your service or your digital product might be available off the shelf. For example, for the affordable housing service that we built, we use an off-the-shelf module for running the lottery, for sending emails, for standardizing the addresses that people type in themselves, to resize images when people take photos of their documents to upload. We didn't need to build custom software for all of that. We also chose to use, for part of the service, Salesforce, which is sort of a customizable off-the-shelf solution. So being modest about, are your needs really not met by anything out there on the market, which was true for us for affordable housing, or might there be something available? And then also being realistic about whether or not you are going to actually do your early user research yourself. Have you, before you've written this RFP, actually gone out and done several weeks of user research and discovery which you're now reflecting in that RFP, or is that part of what you're procuring? Are you looking for a vendor to also do that initial user research? If you haven't done that user research and discovery, and that's okay, you may not have people on staff who are experienced at doing user research and discovery for software projects, then you might be putting a lot of assumptions into your requirements and RFPs that aren't backed up by research yet. And so it's really important to be modest about what you actually know and what you've actually learned from research versus what are hypotheses or expectations. And then I think also the other thing to be modest and realistic about is what you want to get accomplished on a time frame. The truth is that in software development, it's okay and easy to decide what you're going to do in the first 3 months, or even looking at 6 months, what you hope to get done. Once you get past that, it's a lot of guesswork, and it's not effective and not going to be successful if your RFP dictates what you're going to get done in the next 2+ years in terms of custom software development. So be humble and scope out what you want to get done in the first 3 or 6. And then after that, you can have more of loose hopes or expectations that you're trying to convey to the vendor about what you think you might want to tackle next. And this allows you to learn as you go. I think also another thing to be reasonable about is how much staff you have assigned to this. Sort of share that with your vendor, and be realistic about what bandwidth you have to participate, because custom software development takes a lot of work from both sides. If all of these questions and topics are an area where you don't know much yet, consider writing an RFP for a research or discovery phase first, where you'll bring on a vendor to partner with you to do that early learning and exploration and really define what you're going to build, what the timeline is, what staff you need. That's a far better approach, bringing in that expertise to do that strategic work with you, than trying to do it yourself based on a lot of assumptions in the RFP writing process. And finally, part of this tip is don't be afraid to show what you don't know. It's okay to, in your RFP, say, we don't know yet A, B, C, D, or we have not yet explored or researched X, Y, Z. Instead of saying the software must and then listing 10 requirements, you can say, we expect that the software will likely, and list 4 or 5. And that leaves room for you and your new partner that you're hiring to work together to figure out what it really needs to do and what's really feasible. Anything else you'd add there, Zach? I know I just covered a lot.
Yeah, I think just to that last point, asking vendors how they would recommend to strategically approach a problem can be really valuable as you move into an evaluation phase. I think often we've seen procurements that allow vendors who exhibit the ability to be a great partner through creative thinking to rise to the top, to be some of the more successful procurements and some of the more exciting ones for us to participate in. The other side of that coin are procurements where the vendor is not rewarded or encouraged to offer their perspective. And I think then you lose the opportunity to identify a vendor who brings subject matter expertise or who brings a new perspective to the problem. And so considering ways to invite that creative strategic partnership during the procurement and evaluation process, I think can really redound to the best outcomes for the project. So the second tip is be cool. Get good vendors interested. When Ashley and I were talking about preparing for this webinar, we went back and forth a lot on the idea that procurement is a lot like recruiting a great team. At Exygy, we're a human capital business, and we're successful when we hire the best folks. And in the same way, government procurements are successful when they're able to bring the best partner on. And the way to find the best partner, just like the way to find and recruit the best team members, is to explain what's great about doing this work. You have an opportunity to really sell the project in your procurement. One of the most obvious ways to sell the exciting nature of your project is to talk about the impact and talk about the challenge. So from an impact perspective, talk to us about how many lives are going to be affected. How is the local community going to be transformed? How is government going to be more efficient and effective? How are caseworkers going to be better at doing their jobs? Those are the kinds of things that gets an agency like Exygy really excited and allows us to get our staff excited to explain why this project is the most important thing for us to be going after. Now, not every project is going to be pulling at the heartstrings and affecting the lives of the underserved, but every project has a set of challenges that are interesting. Is there a lot of data for us to work with that our engineers are going to be really excited about sinking their teeth into? Or are we going to be laying the groundwork for future transformation in government? If you have the opportunity to talk to your PR team or your comms team about how to use language that's going to get a team really excited about doing this work with you. So in addition to explaining the impact and the challenge, another thing that's going to get vendors really interested is making the procurement process easy for them. Provide a clear and agile RFP response timeline. In the past, we've seen projects that we're really excited about responding to, but the timeline was so short. There was no way we could put a high quality response together. Understand that the question and answer process is key for us to qualify an opportunity. And we can't start writing a response until we get the answers to our questions back. An ideal RFP response timeline gives us 4 weeks after the answers are back to the Q&A to spend time writing a high quality response to your procurement. And in addition, make sure that you can procure like it's 2018. Allow us to submit digital copies. Don't make us print triplicates, bind them and staple them on the left. And be flexible about what work can be done in person versus what work can be done virtually. It's critical to have your team in person for a kickoff or for user research, but we find that we're extremely effective by having some of our work done remotely and some of our work done in person. And when a procurement requires that all work be done in person, it can eliminate modern vendors from contention because staff may not want to move around the country or around the region. Ashley, anything to add there?
Only to emphasize how important this is. I can't tell you how often I've talked to a company and asked them if they're going to respond to an RFP or encourage them to consider responding and gotten kind of a dismissive response. Like, we read it, it seems boring, it doesn't seem like a fit for us, like, no. I think we have this sense that people are banging down our doors trying to win city contracts, and that is true for some companies, and we're gonna talk a little bit later about how to find pick the good companies, but often the good ones are pretty busy. They've got a lot of business, they've got a lot of options of RFPs to respond to. They're probably hopefully doing work in the private sector. We'll talk about that later, but you really got to catch their eye. You got to get their attention, especially if you're having hoops for them to jump through, although as Zach said, reduce the hoops. You got to get them to want to put in the effort. And I think it's almost like a press release or advertising copy. Like, you got to pitch your story and why this is interesting and exciting and hip. And another thing that comes to mind now as we talk about this, Zach, is like part of being cool is like how you promote your RFP. Like, make a landing page on your website, tweet about it, or get your friends to blog about it. You can't just have your City Office of Contracts Administration posted on their website, because great vendors are not spending their time trolling those sites. They often hear about it by word of mouth. So make sure you do some PR for your RFP.
Yeah, those are great additions. Thanks, Ashley. Shall we move on to tip number 3?
Yeah. So tip number 3 is be smart. And what we mean by that is there's some ways you can set your project up for success. So the first one is by going modular. And what we mean by that is don't try to procure the entire custom software build all in one RFP and one contract from one vendor. Sometimes that can work for a small project, but probably more likely most big builds, large systems, are going to need to be broken up into smaller pieces. So it could be like the database and the API and the parts of the public user interface can be broken up. And the reason to do that is because those things are going to require different skill sets, and there are very few vendors that are good at all of them in-house. And so if you put them all together, you're going to get vendors who are mediocre or like barely checking the box responding, because they're the only ones who can offer all of those. vendors who develop expertise are only going to be able to do probably small parts of your project. It also reduces risk. By breaking it up into pieces, you're not putting all your eggs in one basket or trying to manage it all at once. You're breaking it into smaller pieces. You can get those done, do them well, manage costs on them. If you feel good about the vendor, you might end up selecting that vendor to do other modules as well. The other way to set your project up for success is what I referenced earlier about being modest, but understand how agile development works, and in knowing that, write your requirements and your ongoing timeline in pencil instead of in pen. So what we mean by that is sketch out what you think you're going to build and what you think the software requirements are, but only start to define them really concretely as you're at the point where you're building that piece of the software. This is a critical part of agile development because the things later out on the time horizon, later out on the roadmap, are actually going to be influenced by what results you get from the earlier pieces. So once you get something out there and have people using it, that's going to shift what comes later, and it should, because that's really good data. But if you've already written your requirements in pen, in the RFP and in the contract, neither you nor the vendor is going to have any flexibility, unless you do a contract amendment, to adjust and learn from what you're seeing as you put what you build out in the world. So you're going to get better results if you leave room for adjustment. And then I think the other thing to do to set your project up for success is to leave room for user research and discovery in your budget and your scope. If you don't have in-house expertise in how user-centered design and agile methodology work, there's a lot of resources on the internet where you can learn about that. But a key part of it is really the central importance of user research in informing design and build. And that means research ahead of time, and it also means testing what you've designed and built along the way. And a lot of times, I think in government RFPs, folks can leave that out. They don't budget for that, or they don't include that in the scope. They don't hire vendors who know how to do it. And so they're missing that one thing that is really critical to successfully building great software. And then the last one is building the right team internally. So if you're being smart as you do this, you understand how much it's going to take to support it. On the housing service, we had 3 of us working 20 to 40 hours a week on supporting this project internally, plus the 2 vendors that we had and all the modular software that we got off the shelf. So that worked pretty well. We've actually decided we need even more dedicated resources to maintain this in the long run. So we'll talk about for the plan for the future, but even along the way during development, we couldn't just outsource project and product management to the vendors. We really had to have that staffing in-house. And that probably means at least one person who's pretty technically savvy and one person who understands the program really well. And that might mean you need to hire.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. And I think I'll add to that understanding who's on the other side, who is on your team, is really important for us. It's generally one of the first questions we ask in a Q&A is, who's staffed on this project on your side? What's their skill set, and how much time will they be able to dedicate to this project? Because we only want to work on projects that are going to be successful. And we know that having the right folks on your team is absolutely critical to success. We need folks who are properly skilled to be able to manage potentially multiple vendors, to be able to manage a technical project, and who also can get access to the right subject matter expertise, both inside and outside of your agency. And also we want to know that there's folks who are going to provide air cover, who are going to be able to make sure that we're able to truly take an agile, iterative, user-centered approach. So really getting some understanding about who's on your team is something we're always asking about, and it can be helpful for you to describe that even in the procurement. Anything else to add there, Ashley?
No, I think that's great.
Great. So the 4th tip is be picky. And this is about the evaluation phase of your procurement and how you define your evaluation phase when you're writing your RFP. Well, one of the things that we love to see is when we're asked to demonstrate high quality work rather than demonstrate high quality narrative. You're not hiring us to write copy for you. So why would you select the firm that does the best job of writing copy in the RFP? You should select the firm that demonstrates clearly that they can provide the highest quality work. And there's a few ways to do that. One way is to have an evaluation period that includes a coding challenge or includes a mock user interview so that you can actually see your vendors in action doing the kind of work that they're going to be doing. Make sure you include scoring for that in your evaluation criteria and reduce the amount of score that you're going to, the weighting that you're going to put on that narrative response format. The firms that have great folks set up to do narrative responses are the large firms who have a dedicated team. And those folks are not the people who are going to be doing the work. And it's really not an effective way to separate a great firm from a mediocre one. In addition, you should be looking for markers of excellence. One of the markers that Ashley alluded to earlier that we recommend looking for is look for firms who do work in more than just the government sector. Look for firms who work in the commercial sector, who work with nonprofits and other organizations, because those firms, particularly those who work in the commercial sector, are going to be picking up best practices, what's on the cutting edge, and being able to bring those learnings into their work with you. If you work with firms or even divisions of firms that are only focused on the public sector, you're going to lose out on the opportunity to be doing things in the most modern and innovative way. And again, you're going to end up finding firms who are mostly those traditional incumbents. Another marker of excellence and a way to differentiate high quality firms is to ask them, how do they recruit? How do they vet? How do they retain great talent? Because what you're looking for is a long-term partner. And you're going to want to know that whoever gets assigned on your project from this vendor is going to be a great partner, a great staff member. And so asking your vendor a little bit about how do they recruit, how do they vet, how do they retain is going to ensure that you know that you have a team that's going to continue to be excellent, not just during the procurement process, but for the lifetime of your partnership. And finally, we touched a little bit on this earlier, but reward creativity and original thought in the responses and interviews. We've seen procurements in the past where folks are like, they can't follow instructions. So how can they be a good partner? And instead, certainly it's important that you get folks who are able to meet your requirements, but at the same time, find opportunities, ask questions, create parts of your procurement that allow vendors who are able to demonstrate creative thought, strategic partnership to be scored more highly than those who simply follow the letter of the procurement, because that's the kind of partner who's going to help you deliver better outcomes for your constituents. Anything to add there, Ashley?
I really think you nailed it, Zach. I think it's a big red flag for me if a vendor has only ever worked with government or can only provide government examples. I will say there's some exceptions to that. There's some great firms springing up that focus on the government sector. So I think you're looking at what's the experience of their staff. You want staff who have experience working at top-notch private sector firms. But you really want to see that they've worked in places that are innovative and modern. And we all know that public sector digital product development has not been for a long time. And that's part of why we're trying to improve it. So if they're the status quo, then that's probably not what you want. And I think another way to really see that demonstration of high quality work is to test drive things they've built. So we often ask for project demonstrations of the city or project examples, and it often means screenshots and links. And you should score those in detail and click those links and take a tour of the software they built. If it's behind an authentication or something, have them give you a demo where you're actually driving. But yeah, so see and feel their work that they've done in the past, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. Having vendors come in during an interview process and show you their work, and not even just showing you their end product, but showing you the process of getting there.
Yeah.
Have vendors who have done open source work in the past, who can show you their GitHub repositories and show you the artifacts of their human-centered design process. Will allow you to really understand what the process is going to be like collaborating with this vendor. I think those are alternatives or supplements to the kind of coding challenges that I described earlier. Okay, let's go to the last tip.
Yeah, our last tip for you guys is to be thoughtful. And by that, what we mean is plan for the future when you're writing and issuing your RFP. I think sometimes folks think that buying custom software is like buying off-the-shelf software, in the sense that once the software is there, it's there. Like once you buy copies of Microsoft Word and PowerPoint or licenses for them, they're just there. Like you don't have to do much with them. Like maybe occasionally you pay for an upgrade or you get a free update to a new version, but they sort of just live and you don't have to worry about them too much once you procure them. And that is because there's a team of engineers and designers and PMs at Microsoft that is constantly worrying about them. And if you decide to build custom software because there's nothing available on the market for you, like there wasn't anything available for us to accept affordable housing applications, you have to do that work. So you have to have the engineer, design, PM resources, product management resources to manage the software in an ongoing way. Or if you're not going to build that in-house, you have to plan for a long-term contract with your vendor partner or a different vendor partner to maintain and operate that software that you've built. For Dahlia, as I mentioned, we decided to hire a team of 4. We had not had design and engineering resources working on this in-house from the beginning, and we decided that that is our long-term maintenance plan. So we're building a product team that will focus on maintaining that service, improving it, and then building other affordable housing services. And this has to be part of your budget from the beginning. If you're going to build custom software, you have to think about that. Even if you decide that you want to work with a vendor partner, you have to think about how much would it cost to have them give you sort of round-the-clock responsiveness. Like, do you need that kind of 24/7, or at least during the week, like quick responsiveness, sort of uptime guarantee support for your service, or is it okay if they get back to you in a few days? And that will affect your budget or whether you decide to do in-house or hire a vendor. If you do decide to hire, you should consider having the vendor who helped you build the software help you recruit, interview, and hire. They can help review code samples, write interview questions, sit in on interviews. We did this on our side, and we find that really helpful to really have the experience of the people who know the code base, who know the product, helping you think about what you're going to need to support it, and helping you think about what the right staffing is and what roles you need. One metaphor I like to really convey this is that when you build custom software, it's kind of like planting a garden, and you can't just plant it and be done. Like, you have to go in there every day or every week and be pulling weeds and fertilizing and trimming, and in the spring you might need to plant new annuals, and you might have to harvest something in the fall. You have to move things indoors in the winters. Like, it's a lot of work, and software is the same way, unfortunately. It's not unfortunately, it's critical to how we deliver our business now and how we deliver our services. So it sort of deserves that attention and focus, I think. Anything else you'd add there, Zach?
No, I think you nailed it, Ashley. Thank you for that. I don't think I have anything to add on that tip. So in summary, we've said that you should be modest, you should be cool, you should be smart, you should be picky, and you should be thoughtful when you're developing an RFP. We've summarized some of the points on this slide, and we'll share these slides back with everyone on the webinar at the end here. And let's see. I think that is everything we've got. Oh, we've got some additional RFPs that we need to add links here to these slides. So we'll add some links here, and we're going to share these out. So our contact info is here. We're super grateful for everyone's time here today. If anybody wants to continue the conversation after this webinar, please feel free to reach out. Both Ashley and I are available, and we're looking forward to supporting you to make sure you're able to have successful digital transformations, deliver digital services in the future. Anything to add, Ashley?
No, that's it.
Great. Thank you all.